Cody Rhodes has himself a big problem. That's what we learned on this week's edition of WWE SmackDown. We've said that we knew Randy Orton and Kevin Owens would have to react to Cody Rhodes' decision to team with Roman Reigns at Bad Blood to take on Sikoa and Jacob Fatu, and that's what this show was built around. The reaction from those two, Cody's two best friends in WWE, and now we see what the fallout is going to be, and I do not think it is going to be good for the current WWE Undisputed Champion, Cody Rhodes. Why? Because you were, again, led to believe on this show that once again it's Kevin Owens who is getting more and more frustrated with Cody Rhodes, and he had reason to get even more frustrated with Cody Rhodes following what happened in the main event. We know that it was Randy Orton and Kevin Owens teaming up to take on Sikoa and Jacob Fatu, the same two people that Cody and Roman Reigns are going to face at Bad Blood. And yet, Randy Orton was the person in the back who told Cody, you're okay to come on out. If you need to come out and help us, if the Tongans come out there, you can come help if we need the backup. Well, we know before that, it was Kevin Owens telling Cody he didn't want him coming out for this match. They were preparing for their match in the main event on SmackDown. Cody already has his match in tag team fashion at Bad Blood, but teaming with Roman Reigns against the Bloodline. But yet, it's Cody deciding to go the route of listening to Orton instead of listening to Owens. And what happens? Well, Jacob Fatu throws Cody back into the ring after taking him out on the outside, and Cody bumps into the referee. The referee is down, and when is he down? Of course, it's when Kevin Owens has hit the stunner inside the ring, and that does not allow for the count, but it does allow Jacob Fatu to go over, hit two super kicks on Kevin Owens, and then it's Owens taking the pin via Solo Sikoa to give the Bloodline the win in the main event. So Cody, yet again, has done something to piss off Kevin Owens, and we visually saw this escalate to a point that we've not seen it so far. Sure, we've had the teases with Kevin Owens, teasing, potentially hitting Cody with a chair and all this other stuff. But now we actually had physical contact here, where Owens gives Cody the shove. These two guys are in each other's faces. And who is the person who is trying to calm everything down? It's Randy Orton. Because if there's one thing we know about Randy Orton, he's always been the person who has calmed all the situations down, right? He has always been the mediator. But this time around, he has a very interesting role because we know that what WWE wants to build towards is that big money match between Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton. By putting him in the middle of this, it makes it a lot more intriguing because of some of the things we talked about before. We all think Kevin Owens is going to turn, right? And remember, what's interesting about this too, Owens has had two chances now to express his thoughts in word form about why he's mad at Cody Rhodes for teaming with Roman Reigns. But each time, the past 2 weeks, go back to last week, now come to this week, where he comes in as Orton and Cody are talking to start the show. And Owens has a chance to speak each time, but it's the Bloodline who interrupts him each time he's tried to do that. So we still don't know exactly what Kevin Owens thinks. We can see it from his physical actions, right? But we still haven't heard him say it out loud, what he thinks about Cody teaming with Roman Reigns. We've heard it from Randy Orton now, because that was the opening of the show, right? Randy Orton was the person who addressed it right from the beginning. He wanted Cody to come out, and he wanted to get Cody's thoughts on why he's teaming with Roman Reigns. Cody gives his response in return, and Orton says, I don't have a problem with it, unless, basically, it becomes a problem, right? So Orton adding that little line in there is everything here, because we know that's going to be something we can look back on and say, there you go. Even Orton told him, if it became a problem, it's going to be pretty much game over for Cody Rhodes. But the thing about Owens here, and we've said it, the past couple weeks, this is definitely thinking that you're leaning towards something where it's going to be really difficult for Cody if both Randy Orton and Kevin Owens turn on him, right? That's going to be a bit of a challenge. And I also think it's a bit of a challenge for SmackDown if you have Orton and Owens both turn. Because SmackDown is a brand that needs, these top baby faces. Sure, you've had Roman return, but we know it's not a full-time situation. Cody is there as the champion. And no, just for the full record, Cody's not turning anytime soon. WWE would be madmen to have Cody turn heel at any point in the near future because, again, this isn't just about the story they're telling. It's about merchandise sales. It's about all these other things. So if you go into this with the idea that both of these guys are going to turn on Cody, I think that's probably a bigger issue for SmackDown than it is maybe just this particular story. I don't know if you can necessarily turn both of these guys on Cody right now. But I do think this is something, as we've said, where you're getting all the hints that it's going to be Kevin Owens that turns. But like I said, he still has not said specifically all the things that have frustrated him about Cody teaming with Roman Reigns. We know it's there, the backstage segment. Again, Owens is his frustration is heightened, and it definitely heightened after this main event, after he was forced to lose this match. But could it still be something where we think it's going to be Owens that's turning, and he's the one that's going to take out Cody? But instead, it's the Viper, Randy Orton, who is the person who is going to eventually strike because Orton just told Cody, it's not going to be a problem, you teaming with Roman Reigns until, basically unless you make it a problem, right? And so this is one of those things where with Cody teaming with Roman Reigns and him now inadvertently costing them a tag team match, it still involves the Bloodline. So the fact that Cody's going to continue this and stay in this Bloodline thing with Roman Reigns at Bad Blood, it's becoming more of a problem. And I think as we see that start to turn in that direction, I think that's where you're going to have Randy Orton eventually snap on Cody. And again, I don't know if both guys turn because they're making it so obvious with Kevin Owens. And we know how this is in pro wrestling. When you make it so obvious, sometimes it's a little bit of a red herring. Could that be the case here? To where Owens is going to eventually be able to calm down. He gave him the hug. You've seen the visual, all of that at the end. Owens is trying his best not to go back to killer instinct Kevin Owens, right? Where the guy is just out to turn on his friend. He's trying not to do that. But can Randy Orton be the person who can hold himself back? That's the real question here, and we know what the ultimate answer is going to be, is that he's not going to be able to. Cody's going to do something that is going to make Randy Orton eventually snap, and that's where I think this gets a lot more interesting, because like I said, I don't know if it's good to have both guys turn on Cody right now, because I don't know if SmackDown needs that necessarily. But I think there's a way to tell it where somehow this trio is going to break up, essentially, right? We just don't know how it's going to happen, and I think they've added a lot more suspense with that by doing it this way, having Orton kind of play the middleman now to see if it is actually going to be Kevin Owens being the person that Cody has to worry the most about moving forward. So a lot of that's going to depend on what happens at Bad Blood, and we know that too. And something else that I think we have to bring up when talking about this, and I've seen some people speculate on this after this edition of SmackDown, and I think some of you guys have brought this up before. Could this War Games match not be what we think it's going to be? Could it not be the original Bloodline versus, the Rogue or Outlaw version of the Bloodline, as it was called here on this episode? Could it be Cody Rhodes, Roman Reigns, Randy Orton, and Kevin Owens against Solo Sikoa's version of the Bloodline? It seems like they want you to think that, right? It seems like by putting these four guys all intertwined in the story right now, and knowing that Survivor Series is 2 months away. Like, we're officially 2 months away now. It's not 2.5 months, not 3 months. We're 2 months away. So can they get to that original Bloodline reunion in now a span of 2 months or less? Or is this the direction they're leading us in? Is that it's going to be Orton and Owens and Cody and Reigns, and that's where maybe you have a big turn from Randy Orton there at War Games? Is that a possibility at this point? I still, you guys know, like the original idea of having Bloodline versus Bloodline for War Games, because I think, look, we've already had for some people, it's been hard to justify having Cody team with Roman Reigns, right? Like, that's been the story. Can you really have Kevin Owens and Randy Orton also team with Roman Reigns in that setting? There's something you can do, I'm sure, to get us to that point and escalate it to where they have no choice, right? They have to get in there. They're going to reluctantly team with Reigns too. But I am still, certainly more of a fan of the idea of doing original Bloodline versus Solo's Bloodline. But not sure. I know some people are speculating on that. And I don't know if I like that as much, which, for obvious reasons. I think most people would probably think the same thing. But if they are really trying to slow grind this story, you could definitely play this out, I suppose, over the next couple months and have those 4 team together against the Bloodline. But we'll see how it, again, I think a lot of this is going to depend on what happens at Bad Blood. And I think the issue with that, too, is if you're waiting a couple more months and you're still not bringing Jimmy back, you're still not bringing Heyman back, is that something that you really want? But it also could be a thing where they're holding off this big, Bloodline versus Bloodline feud for WrestleMania season, which, is still a little ways away, but it's not that far away now, I guess, if you really think about it. 6 months, I mean, that's half a year, but you guys understand what I'm saying. Like, we're getting closer and closer now. So, I don't know. I think this is a very interesting spot they're in right now, but really, a lot more of this is about if Cody does not get the hell out of this situation with the Bloodline, if he does not get away from it, it's going to lead to his downfall. And that's always been the story. But now it's much different to where it's going to cost him his friends. And he's got to get out of here. And we'll see if he can do that after Bad Blood. So, again, that was kind of your main theme on the show. And remember, too, Solo also brought up the idea that, Randy Orton and Kevin Owens had let Cody down each time in their fight against the Bloodline, right? And that has been the story, too, is the inability for Orton and Owens to kind of, get that one up on Solo's version of the Bloodline. They were even bringing up the stats about Owens not pinning a member of the Bloodline or whatever it was. Was that last week, I think? So they're really playing into that. So I think that's something else where Solo's kind of planting that seed too and trying to cause the dissension by saying it with all 3 in the ring that, Cody, you can't really rely on these 2. That's why you're teaming with Roman Reigns, because you cannot rely on Kevin Owens and Randy Orton because they're just letting you down time and time again. So Solo kind of stirred the pot here, which you would expect from the one and only Tribal Chief, Solo Sikoa. But there you go. There's some thoughts on that. I'm curious to know what you guys think, how this thing's going to play out, because I think they've really, kind of twisted this a bit to where there's a lot more interesting possibilities rather than, I think, just obvious ones at this point. There's a couple directions you can go in with this whole scenario there. But elsewhere on SmackDown, as usual, I mean, this was really the main theme on the show. This was, kind of the biggest thing here and, teasing all the tension there. But as we said, you did get some tension between Nia Jax and Tiffany Stratton. We know what's coming. Eventually, I think you're going to have that huge moment where Tiffany's going to, cash in on Nia. It's just a matter of how long away is that going to happen. And, again, talk about getting a little more physical here. You had Nia, grab Tiffany Stratton by the throat here and make it very clear that if things go bad for her, well, things are going to go bad for Tiffany too. And so Nia making that clear, which, of course, ties into the match we now know we're going to get at Bad Blood. It's going to be Nia Jax taking on Bayley. We said we weren't sure who's going to win that match between Bayley and Naomi because, remember, Bayley has still not gotten her rematch, and it would make sense to give her that opportunity. And, Tiffany's now going to take on Naomi next week. They kind of set that up for that. And, yeah, so, I mean, we'll get into our Bad Blood predictions and everything, but I think there's a lot of, again, possibilities, too, with that because they are kind of upping the idea that Tiffany's going to get a bit more frustrated with Nia now, and could that lead to something happening at Bad Blood? We'll find out, with that group there. But that rematch is set, Nia Jax versus Bayley at Bad Blood for the Women's Championship. Elsewhere, just as we thought, Carmelo Hayes does even the series with Andrade. They're now 3-3, so we're going into Game 7 between these two, and you also had Carmelo attack LA Knight before the match, so I think it's pretty clear that we're going to eventually head towards that match between LA Knight and Carmelo Hayes, which, initially I thought that was sort of the end game here. They went ahead and did the match between LA Knight and Andrade, but I do think the end game is LA Knight and Carmelo, and so I think that will probably lead to Melo winning, the 7th game of this series here. And so, another good match. I understand why they're doing this because, these guys are just, every time they're having just fantastic matches. And like we said, we've talked about SmackDown and kind of the state of the brand right now. I think you need some of these kind of matches on this brand because it is a brand that I think depth-wise is certainly not quite to where Raw is. And so, and remember, as we mentioned too, keep in mind, like normally we say it's not there because of the hour difference, 3 hours versus 2 hours. But remember, like Raw's about to make the switch to 2 hours. SmackDown is going to be going to 3 hours, we think, according to the reports. So you really have to do some things to kind of beef up SmackDown once we get there on that. But for now, another good match between Andrade and Carmelo Hayes, and yeah, I think it's eventually setting up what we all think, and that is the United States title match with Carmelo challenging LA Knight. So that was, something else here in particular on this show. And really, I mean, all the other stuff, you had the Chelsea Green setting up the dumpster match next week against Meechin. They've really loaded up the, SmackDown next week from Nashville, as you're going to have that. You're going to have the triple threat ladder match, where it's going to be the Bloodline defending the tag team championships against DIY and the Street Profits. Should be a fantastic match there. So I'm sure that will be a lengthy one to kind of carry, a good portion of that main event segment next week on SmackDown. Of course, that's before Bad Blood. So we also had here, too, I'm looking at my notes, I almost forgot this, like they're teasing now the return of AJ Styles. He's coming back next week. So, that's something else that you kind of add to this group. And so, yeah, I think they're kind of really building up next week's show, which will be the one right before Bad Blood. But I'm curious to see where they go with AJ Styles. I think he's someone that, a lot of people have been asking, like, where did this guy go? I mean, he was just challenging for the Undisputed title, several months ago against Cody. And, we know, kind of where does he go from here? I don't know that he's jumping back into that conversation, but having AJ Styles around is always a good thing, because I think that we know, again, he's someone who can certainly put together, fantastic matches, but at the same time, he is someone, too, that I think is at an interesting point in his career to where there are some kind of fun stories you can work with there, about coming up short against Cody and having that, that opportunity at the championship. Was that the final time for AJ Styles? And so, I'm curious to see what they do with AJ when he makes his return next week. So there you go, guys. There's some thoughts on SmackDown. As always, I appreciate you watching. Let me know what you thought about this particular episode of the show. Where do you think things are headed with this Cody Rhodes thing? I mean, Cody has a lot of people against him right now. He's got the Bloodline against him. He's got Kevin Owens against him. He's got Randy Orton against him. He's got Roman Reigns against him. Cody doesn't have any friends at this point. I mean, he still has friends in Kevin Owens and Randy Orton, but I think that friendship is getting fractured a bit here based on how the story is playing out. But let me know your thoughts on all that, and again, what you thought of this week's SmackDown, and what do you think? Kind of now a week away from Bad Blood. How do you think see things playing out from there? But again, appreciate you guys watching as always. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button on your way out. I've also been telling you I'm doing more on Twitter now, sharing a lot more interesting wrestling stuff, both current and kind of past as well. So check out everything I've got going on Twitter. You can find me at WrestleBlake, find me there on that, and hope to talk to you guys on there, because again, I'm having a lot of fun, kind of interacting with some of you on there, and again, sharing things on there that we can't necessarily share in YouTube form, whether it's kind of just some random thoughts on stuff that's happening throughout the day, or like I said, kind of some old wrestling history stuff that you guys know that I greatly enjoy. So appreciate you watching as always. Some of your thoughts on this week's edition of WWE SmackDown.